Pray for me.
Pray for Mason. He's going to have steam coming out of his ears. It's going to be great.
Unpacking Mormonism is a subsidiary of Daisy Girl Communications, LLC. All content herein is intended for educational purposes only and does not replace the advice or counsel of your personal care provider.
Welcome back to Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma. I'm your host, Sarah Westbrook, joined today by my co-host, Mason Westbrook.
Yeah. Hey, for those of you that are here for the first time, welcome. We're glad that you're here. Let us tell you a little bit about what we're trying to do. We're trying to unpack. As the title says, we try and take things out of that suitcase that maybe we've been carrying around for a long time and examine and decide how we can downsize or upsize or get rid of or whatever so that we are more mindful in what we're carrying around. That's really what we're trying to do.
It's actually really funny. So my daughter, Katie, she is 14, and we just got back from a trip to Orlando. So I went to Orlando with a friend and had some fun with a friend, and then I did some continued education stuff. And then my teenagers, my 16-year-old and 14-year-old, flew out with me, and we went to Universal Studios and Adventure Islands, Universal's Islands of Adventure, that's what it's called, park, in Orlando in order to explore the Harry Potter land. So we got to explore Diagon Alley and we got to explore Hogsmeade in Orlando and had an absolute blast. And one of the interesting things as we were packing to come home, to fly home, the kids came into the room and Katie looked at me and said, "Mom, why are you shoving your dirty underwear into that glass cup?" And so what had happened is we went to this pirate dinner theater that was also phenomenal in Orlando. We had a great time.
I think we'd all like to know the answer to that question.
I know, right? I'm going to tell you a story about my dirty underwear in a souvenir cup. So we went to this pirates thing and I ordered an alcoholic drink. And if you bought the souvenir cup, your refills were substantially discounted. And y'all, I just finished with Universal Studios. Talk about sensory overload. I was in the mood for an adult beverage or two, possibly even three, so that I could just not give a crap about all the buzzing in my head. My poor kids all struggle with some level. Well, not all of them. Hayden escaped, but my 14-year-old and my 11-year-old biological children both struggle with that sensory overload issue. They get that from me. Poor babies. So anyway, I bought the souvenir cup in order to get my adult beverages for a lot cheaper, because I'm telling you, when you're in Orlando, adult beverages are a lot more expensive than they are in Sarah's personal kitchen. So anyway, I was packing the cup and I stuffed my dirty underwear into the cup because it was a dirty cup. Because we got home late, I literally put it on the table, fell asleep, got up the next morning, we packed, we hopped on the airplane, and we flew home. And so I stuffed my dirty underwear inside the cup and then wrapped it in some like dirty pajamas so that way the glass would not break in my suitcase. And Katie looked at me like I was losing my mind, and she's like, "I would never, ever drink out of that cup again because, you know, now where has that stuff been?" She's giving me a hard time. And I looked at her and I said, "You know what? When we get home, we get to unpack, launder, clean, figure it out, and then the cup will be perfectly good." And she looked at me and she goes, "Mom, is this like some of your shrinky voodoo magical analogy shit that I'm supposed to like pick up some deeper lesson?" And I just smiled at her and I said, "Only if you want to take it that way, baby girl." And she rolled her eyes and stomped out of the room. So, you know, practical teenagers, typical teenage behavior. But yes, that is exactly what we're doing, y'all. We are pulling the dirty underwear out of the dirty cup, laundering both, and then re-examining what we're going to keep and what we're not going to keep. Mason, you were really cute this morning when you came in and you're like, "What do you want me to do with this cup thing?" I just put it in with the other adult beverage alcoholic cups that I have that I will probably never use again, but it looks cool.
It's memories, right? It's memories.
Yeah. Alrighty, so the title for today is Sarah fucking knows better. And this topic came to me while I was in Orlando. I was really frustrated with myself, and we'll explain why here in a little bit. But our intent for today is to understand, why is it that when we know better, we don't always do better? You know, we kind of have those sayings out there that I didn't do better because I didn't know better. And I'm here to tell you, you know what? I know better, and that doesn't always translate into me doing better. And so I really want to kind of explain what could be going on for you. And again, we'll do this through a recent event in my life and in my journey, trying to navigate relationships on the post-Mormon side of Mormonism. And Mason still in Mormonism. Mason went to church today, and Truth. Said he had some good conversations, and it felt really good to be back in that familiar environment. Is there anything from that, Mace, that you want to share before we move on?
No, not particularly. I'm just trying to still just figure out where I am. But what I do love about the topic is this can be applied to so many different things, right? We're coming from the lens of Mormonism and religious trauma. That's what we try and relate it to. But the reality is we've all been in situations where we knew better and we did it anyway in a host of different contexts.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that really what we're talking about today is trauma brain. You know, we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. And when we get into that word disorder, we're talking about the impact that whatever symptom it is that we're struggling with, how much that is interfering with our ability to function normally. And I would say that what I'm going to talk about today is not a PTSD response, but rather just a post-traumatic response, meaning I have this history of hurt. I have this history of trauma in my life within certain relationships and certain environments.
Right.
And even though I've processed that, even though I know myself really well, so on and so forth, it doesn't always translate into me doing better or responding differently. Sometimes you're still gonna fuck it up. Like, that's humanity, that's normal. And so what do? You know, when we catch ourselves in these patterns of, oh, I didn't handle that the way that I wanted to, that this is really what that podcast is about. One of the things that I want to just reinforce or remind you of is that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So remember that top tier of Maslow talks about achieving your full potential, self-actualization, living up and honoring your own morals and standards. And I can definitely say that when I look at my behavior in the story that we're going to tell you, I can identify in those lower rungs where things were not as strong or stable as I would have liked them to be, as well as recognizing there was a great need in place. And so one of the things I want to bring up is Doctors John and Julie Gottman talk about behind, I'm going to mess this up. Behind every, I can't remember the quote. Okay, so I'm going to say behind.
Go look. It's in your office.
Is it behind?
Yeah,
Mason, why don't you go look really quick, and I'll keep talking. But it's behind every shitty decision, not acting the way I want to. There's a longing there. And Mason actually just like ran. I don't know if you all could hear the like creepy haunted door of the recording studio. But that's really what it is. So what is it, Mason?
Behind every negative affect.
There we go. Behind every negative affect is longing.
Yeah.
And that's from Doctors John and Julie Gottman. I believe that can be found in the book, 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. Excellent book for all relationship functioning, to be completely honest. So negative affect is going to be also defined as uncomfortable emotional states of mind. And so that's where we're going with this. So the other thing is that we have a tendency to be really hard on ourselves. When we don't do better, when we know better, we tend to practice a lot of self-shame.
I know I do.
Yep, I do too. And in this story, really where I kind of got stuck in that shame spiral is, Sarah, you're a counselor. So in my brain, it went things like, you've been licensed since 2014. You've been clinically practicing under some form of supervision since 2012. So since 2012 till 2015 or 16, I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look. 14 to 16, I had a license under supervision. 2012 to 2014, I was practicing as a graduate student.
Right. That
is much longer than most. I will put that out there for most LPCs. It does not take that long to complete all of those supervisory supervision hours. It took me that long because of Mason's career. We moved twice. We moved 3 times in that, because we left North Carolina after my first semester of supervision, and then I finished my graduate supervision in San Antonio, Texas, and then we moved back to North Carolina, and I just kind of held off. And then after that, we got to Killeen, Texas, and I finished up those hours. So it took me a lot longer to complete my supervision hours, which is why I was under supervision for 4 years. Either that or I was just a really bad student. Could be both. Who knows? Anyway, ask my instructors.
Grades didn't seem to reflect that, though.
I think I graduated with a 3.8 or 3.9 GPA with my master's degree, so I don't think it was a bad student issue. Most of my reviews were very, very positive. I had like 2 that gave me areas of improvement. Love those people for giving me the areas of improvement. But as I kind of did this, I was like, you know what, Sarah, you've been studying behavioral health since before Hayden was born. I think I gave birth to Hayden while I was in my bachelor's program. So we're going to say from 2006 to present day, I have dedicated my life to this shit, and I still fucked up. And that was really hard for me. So let's tell the story.
Let's do it.
I'm trying to get you to give us another 4-second long pause. Oh, wait, no, squirrel. We got to check in. So Mason, in our last episode that we did, we talked about me going to Orlando and you having to take care of the kids.
Serious squirrel here.
And Alex, our producer, literally sent us a clip of him laughing at us because you paused for 4 full seconds about how you were going to do with the kids on your own. So before I jump into my story, why don't you give us an update, Mason? How did you do?
Well, the first and most important thing that everyone needs to know is that all of my children are still alive.
They're alive? They were fed?
They're alive. They were fed. They were loved.
They had clothes on when I got home. We're doing good.
So,
although they only got 1 shower over the week, and that was the shower I gave them during the quick. I flew home, grabbed Hayden and Katie, and flew back. And Abigail sat down next to me, and I was like, "Ooh, girl, you're crunchy." So
showers are overrated anyway. Yeah.
So they got fed. They may not have been as clean as normal.
So we did just fine. Really, the only time that I really struggled was the day that I had to work because I had to pick up one of the kids from school because he was sick, and that was a struggle. Mostly because I don't like leaving people hanging, and that's kind of what I did. And everything worked out just fine, but it left me feeling a little overwhelmed. And one of the things that I do love about these experiences, because they've happened a few times over the years, not very many, but they've happened a few times over the years, and I'm grateful for the insight that I get, because some insight you only get just from experience.
So let me clarify, because I think that was maybe a little vague in the sense of when you say, I'm glad that these things happen.
That I've had to take care of the kids on my own.
Because I'm gone
yeah.
for a prolonged period of time.
Only a few times that you've had to leave a week or 2 at a time. I'm not talking about a day or 2, but a week or 2 at a time. And in this case, because of the way that we'd tried to work out our vacation, it ended up that my vacation time did not coincide with you leaving. And so that made things difficult, right, but still doable. And then on Thursday, it was really difficult simply because you took both of my babysitters with you.
Which I would like to say, we took the babysitters as a thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
For being
there was
there
a reason you took the
and
babysitters.
taking care of the little kids so much for us. You guys have really shown up for the family.
Yeah.
Big reward, all expense paid trip to Harry Potter Land.
Well, and in the past,
we had a blast together.
Yeah,
while
and in the
Mason
past,
suffered with the small little one.
I haven't had to try and balance work at the same time. Usually we've been able to coordinate you leaving at the same time that I'll take time off or whatever so that I could just focus on the kids. And so this time when I wasn't able to do that, I got a glimpse into what that's like for you, because that typically is how things are for you now that you're working. You haven't always worked throughout our marriage. For a lot of years. You didn't need to, you weren't working, but at the present moment you're working full time, and you're the one that usually has to adjust if a kid gets sick or they have doctor's appointments or whatever, because my schedule is more rigid, less workable.
Yeah.
So we all survived. It was a difficult experience, but one I'm grateful for, because again, some things you only really understand once you step into the mud. You don't know what mud feels like until you step into it. And
that was not mud. That was day-to-day shit.
Well, okay. But,
it was stinky.
Somebody's got to keep
Abby
it clean
sat
over
next
here.
to me, and I was like, oh, crunchy. Go to the shower. Let's get you cleaned up, baby girl. And boys, you too, because if Abby didn't get one, neither did you. And they were like, but we took one this morning. And I did a sniff check,
So
and I was like, you lie.
Had to balance work. I had to drive to Kansas City once with the other kids. And so, it was challenging, but I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to fail.
Well, and you succeeded and failed. That's normal.
I mostly succeeded. And again, they're all alive.
They are all alive. They are well loved.
None of them got hurt. So, it was, a positive experience.
Wait, so are you saying we cannot blame Tyler getting pneumonia on you?
No.
That's probably good. Tyler did not get a little bit sick, y'all. He got
he was a little bit
sick
sick when he came home, and I had to take care of him, but he's not a little bit sick anymore.
He was a little bit sick. For Friday, on Thursday, I got home on Friday, and by Saturday afternoon, evening, both Mason and I were like, bud, you're tanking. Let's go we ended up taking him to the emergency room, and he got diagnosed with, I'm going to call it deep lobe pneumonia because of the location and just the way, it was a very interesting ER trip. Definitely needed to be in the emergency room, not in urgent care, so I'm grateful for that. Thank you for TRICARE. Because I can just go and not have to worry about the cost. The other thing I want to say here is, one of the things I'm grateful for Mormonism is the push that caused me to be, or led me to choose to be a stay-at-home mom. I really appreciate that. And I wish that more parents had that opportunity to be home with their kiddos when they're little. I did not go back to work until after Abigail, who was our youngest at the time, was in all-day preschool. So I was home for the little kid things. I cannot even imagine, shout out to you parents that are pulling the working parent thing with littles.
For sure.
At home. Because even my internships and whatnot, that's another reason why it took me 4 years, was because I never did 40 hours a week for my supervision hours. I just couldn't because I was doing the stay-at-home mom gig. Yeah.
And so we worked hard to make that possible.
Yeah, and that's been a huge blessing. I'm very grateful for that time. It's been challenging for sure. And I'm very grateful that while they were little, I still went to school and pursued a degree in a field that I really love, because one of the things Mormonism did not give me was the someday you get to enter the workforce and do all these wonderful things and earn your own living and, blah, blah, blah. I didn't get that piece from Mormonism. That came from this fear that I had that you were going to die or leave me. So some of my abandonment trauma, that you were not going to be there to help me raise our kids, and that I did not want to depend on the government. And I wanted to have a job that I could be in charge of me for. internal living in case something ever happened to you. And I'm very grateful for that because, we definitely live very comfortably off of your income as a nurse anesthetist for sure. But if you were to pass away today or become disabled today, we would be okay. And I'm very grateful for that piece too. But yes, I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity. Not everybody gets that. But yeah, being a stay-at-home parent is definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. It's a lot easier dealing with my clients who come to me because of mental illness all day long than it is to take care of toddler terrorists all day long.
Because you never get to hand them off. Not completely, at least. A client you can hand off. You can leave work, but at home they're yours and they're yours forever. So.
Well, and I've always appreciated your 100% all-in willingness to show up as their father and not as a quote-unquote babysitter. Like you've always done a very good job of that from the time Eric joined our family all the way up to last weekend when you forgot to give the kids showers. And I'm sorry. It is so funny that you didn't give them showers just because of the responses I got from the kids when I was like, did you guys take a shower with Dad? And I think it was Landon. It might have been Tyler said, nope, he forgot. And since we don't like it, we didn't do it. And I was just like, well, that's honest. Thanks. You stink. Go get in the shower.
It's so hard. All I have to do is say, hey, go take a shower, right? That's all I have to do.
All you have to do, Mason. And I think your nose is broken because...
Oh, my nose has always been broken. I don't smell at all the way that you smell.
That's why you survive in the medical field.
That's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway. I don't have the same sense of smell that a lot of people do.
So Mason survived. The kids are alive. They're loved. They're thriving. They are clean. They all had showers again this morning. So we got 2 in this last week, starting strong now.
So welcome after that 10-minute squirrel.
All right. So Mason posted again. We're going to talk about
our lives.
Yeah. We're shift back into my story. That squirrel was a big ass squirrel. Here we go. Back into the story.
It's more like a raccoon.
Was it a raccoon?
That was a big one.
I feel like it was a possum, like hanging upside down with their little babies in the pouch or something. Who knows? Anyway, alrighty. Done with our rodents.
Moving on.
Moving right along here. Here we go. Okay. So, of course, we're going to talk about Mason's family. And again, I want to bring this up, that the reason we don't talk more about Sarah's family is I don't have contact with them anymore. If we had done this podcast 5 years ago, you'd have never heard a word about Mason's family. You can read about my family in my upcoming book.
Yes, please do.
Trauma
so that you
bonded.
Get a glimpse into where
Kevin.
Sarah is and why she is the way that she is. And,
you guys
and
get
what
to
she's
learn.
done with that. Because I think there's a lot of people out there who have struggled with at least pieces of what you've struggled with. Some better, some worse. But yeah, applicable.
Yeah. You get to learn about why I'm so f***ed up. So anyway, here we go. But yeah, Trauma Bonded, Navigating Attachments Forged in Complex PTSD is the title of that book. It will be released someday. I'll let you know. It'll be all over the place when we're there. But yeah, so anyway, with Mason's family. Now, this is Mason's youngest brother that we're talking about. Mason posted something on Facebook about the story of Bishop Snow. And this is like Brigham Young's years.
Yes.
Having a man castrated. And the thought is that Bishop Snow ordered the castration of this man because Bishop Snow wanted to marry his girlfriend. And the woman denied and said, no, I want to get married to this gentleman whose name I can't remember right now, which is bad. I'm not remembering the victim's name. And so because the gentleman and the girl declined Bishop Snow's advancements, the story goes that Bishop Snow had him castrated. The girl ended up marrying Bishop Snow, and at some point, weeks or months later, the details right now are not important. If you want to see it, Mason, why don't you go ahead and post that to the Unpacking Mormonism Facebook page that can be found at Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma on Facebook. We've got a group page that is private, based on invite only. So invite your friends, or you can request to join us. And whatnot, but I'll have Mason post the creds there so that way you can see.
If I can figure that out.
If you can't, we'll just send it to Michael and let Michael do it. It'll be fine. So thanks, Michael, for your Facebook moderation services. We really appreciate that. So anyway, So Mason had posted this story, and Mason's youngest brother responded with something along the lines of, this is a conspiracy theory. This isn't true. Show me the data. And so we did. We showed him the data, and everything that we showed, well, that's not good enough. These are journal articles, and Swinner Journal articles data. And so there was a lot of that cognitive dissonance, kind of like, this is information that is uncomfortable for this brother, which of course nobody wants to hear that the prophet was down with somebody getting castrated because he wanted another wife. Like, I don't know how many wives Bishop Snow already had. It was not second or third. We're talking like a lot of women. And we know that polygamy and the way that polygamy was executed in the early days of Mormonism is really, really icky and toxic and yucky. And we're going to probably do a future podcast on some of that later on, just to talk about the pattern of coercion and women as objects. And, yes, that was not necessarily, the polygamy thing was not common in that day and age, but women being treated as objects or property, women not having rights, absolutely was the social norm of that time, as was really aggressive punishments, based on, I don't like that, so I'm gonna cut your balls off type thing. It was a rough, Western frontier type society. And Mormonism did not escape some of that roughness. And so youngest brother is telling us this is a conspiracy, that it didn't happen, that unless he's able to, I guess, see the journal, like I think at one point he asked me, have you actually held the journals in your hand and looked at them? And I'm sitting here and it's really aggravating me because, number one, I felt like he was calling me a liar. Now, please note, I said I felt like he was calling me a liar.
Right.
At one point in these Facebook exchanges, he told me he should not cast his pearls before swine. And I'm like, you know what? F*** you. So, just this idea of, I feel that Mason's family, and my observation is that Mason's family tends to silence the person that they disagree with. It's not an equal exchange of conversation. It's not, we can have a different opinion and still communicate. It's, I'm right, you're wrong, you shut up. And I really hate that. I'm really sensitive to that. And I have a long history in Mason's family of being written off as dumb, as a liar, as an exaggerator. These are the common things. Mason's family is not, they don't like me. Well, some of them do, but most of them do not. And there was also a lot of grief for me because with your youngest brother was 11 when Mason and I got married. So Mason is the oldest, this brother was the youngest, and he and I developed a really close relationship for about the first 2 years of our marriage before he started struggling with being a rebellious teenager and getting involved in, some rough life choices and then cleaning his life up. I'm really proud of him because he got cleaned up off of drugs, got himself sober. He served a mission, happily married, from everything I can see, good daddy, good husband, very loving man.
Yeah.
But I remember those first 2 years where he would come over to our house and he and I would make desserts together. I taught him how to make English toffee, and he and I would watch movies together, and we would banter and we would tease each other. And he hung out at our place a lot. I feel like he was a very lonely kiddo. He was a very troubled kiddo. Didn't really know where his place was in life. And I absolutely love, Mason would go and deliver the mail, and youngest brother would come over and hang out, and he and I had a lot of fun together. And I've always grieved the loss of that relationship. Mason and I paid for his mission. When he went on a mission, we were in a financial position where we sent his bishop of his ward with a little note at the bottom of the tithing slip for little brother Westbrook's mission, and we spent $400. And the reason that we did that was because this brother had some, I think, gold and silver, I don't know which, doesn't matter, that he had left with his dad and said, hey, Dad, I want you to sell this silver and use that to pay for my mission. And Mason's and my thing was, we want him to come home and have his money. So we paid for his mission. And unfortunately, Mason's dad cashed in the silver and kept it. And little brother does not know. I don't think he knows that. I don't think he knows, number one, that we paid 100% of his mission and that he was supposed to come home to 100% of the money that he had prior to leaving, so that he would have a little starter fund, because he went on a mission a little bit later in life. And
and we don't know. We don't know the details of that. And ultimately, we paid for it because we wanted to be able to do that. But we don't know those details for sure. So,
well, I think your dad, when I called him out on it later, his excuse to me, what he told me was, it really wasn't that much silver anyway. It wasn't that much money, and I'll help him pay for school or something with it. And I was like, no, that's still wrong. We paid for his mission so you would leave the money and the silver alone, and you didn't. And then that was one of the times your dad told me how much he hated me, was because I was calling him out on not giving your brother the money, because we asked for that donation of his mission to remain anonymous. We just wanted him to be able to come home and be told, your family paid for your mission so you could have this money. It was, right. We wanted to pay for the mission, but give the credit to family members pitched in and paid for your mission. Here's your money back. And your dad cashed in the silver and kept it, which unfortunately he did that to us too. He stole our money at one point early on in our marriage. He stole my grandfather's money, but all right, we'll skip this. Mason's looking upset. Sorry. I will move on. Moving right along. As you can tell, there's some triggers here. So the thing that I appreciate about youngest brother is that he's engaging with us, and that there's still dialogue. He hasn't written us off completely. And I really appreciate that. Now he's still struggling to communicate in healthy ways, but that makes sense to me because he's not ever been taught how to communicate differently. He's still, and when I say he silences people, he doesn't do it with as much intensity as some of the other brothers that we've talked about on the podcast in the past. Like, it's a little bit more subtle. It's a little bit more gentle. And I feel like he really has a desire to learn how to communicate differently. And he just, I mean, if you don't know better, you can't do better. And so I understand the importance of communicating with gentle startups, with talking about emotions first, with, how to manage conflict and keep the dialogue open. I know how to do all of this, but y'all, I didn't do that. I got frustrated. Mason, you raised your hand. What do you want to put in? I was just going to
interject real quick too. I listened to a Mormonism Live episode recently that talks about the logical fallacies that apologetics use. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he mentioned is, and I forget exactly what he called it, but basically it's where you shift the responsibility for proving that something is true. And apologetics do that all the time. So what happens here is, in this case on Facebook, I post a story, and my brother gets on and says, where's the facts? Where's the facts? Where's the evidence? And over again, I told him, this story is the evidence. It's a story. It would hold up in court unless there was something else that...
Well, I'm sorry, I raised my hand and you stopped quick. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to say, didn't that story have the link that you posted? Didn't it have like the pictures of the journal article and the books? Like, so all of the links were there. Yeah, he just needed to follow them.
Yes.
All right. Sorry. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
He made it sound as if, well, maybe there's been, changes in the story. And you know what? Maybe there have. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that what I posted is absolutely factual. I'm just going to say that what I posted appears to be a relevant and realistic story. Right. And in the absence of a story that contradicted it, it would hold up in court, at least enough to allow for an arrest and for a trial, that kind of thing. I'm not saying it is true, and that's what I told him. I'm saying it looks like this is true, and this is something that we need to talk about, because mostly for me, it's not the details of the story about castration that's a problem. It demonstrates unrighteous authority, which is what I have a problem with. I mean, I don't like the story at all.
But
right?
I was going to say, you don't have a problem with the fact that this poor guy was castrated so that another guy could steal his girl? Creepy.
What I mean is that later my brother posted a different story, or someone else posted, I think, a different story, a different rendering of how this happened. Same outcome, but the reasons were different. And the problem is that there's still this unrighteous dominion kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. There's Brigham Young. In both stories, Brigham Young learned about it, didn't do a thing. There was no censuring. There was nothing, at least from the details of the story that we have.
Because in today's day and age, if Mason, you as a bishop, decided to castrate somebody, I don't think your stake president would have had an opportunity, or the prophet would have an opportunity to call you out on it, because the United States government would have tossed you in jail.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Right, there's a lot of abuse of power going on. I like that.
Yes, and that's what bothers me. And even the Mormon scripture teaches that that's not okay, that we have a propensity for unrighteous dominion. But then there's these stories that happen where as a church authority, in this case Brigham Young, who insert whatever name you want, but in this case Brigham Young had the authority to censure this bishop for essentially taking his progenitorship, like his ability to have children, stolen away just like that. And it appears from the evidence, from the stories that exist, even both of them that contradicts a little bit, it appears that the outcome was the same, no censorship at all on that. And that's what I have an issue with. But in this Mormonism Live, episode, and I'll put it in the show notes, it talks about those kinds of things that... Okay. I posted something that is relevant. All of the source material for that story was in the post, and over and over again, my brother kept asking for, show me the
evidence. He wanted
show
evidence.
Me the evidence.
And there's like, if you read through that, like it wasn't just us at this point, like sending him links. Suddenly we've got like 12, 13 links. And then our good friend Ian Lumgare, that's going to be coming on here in the near future to talk about, I believe we're going to be talking about the word of wisdom. Cannot wait to have Ian on. And, huge shout out to Bill Reel. Thank you so much, Bill, for teaching us how to get that up and running so that our sound quality is better, and really appreciate that. I had a wonderful conversation with Bill Reel the Monday while I was in Orlando. Actually, I might have made everybody on the call a little jealous because we hung up with me going, thanks so much. I'm heading to the beach. Bye. Rude, Sarah, rude. But anyway, very grateful for that. And we're excited to have Ian come on. But Ian pointed out the same thing, Mason, that you're talking about, that RFM had pointed out. So RFM is by trade, an attorney.
An attorney, yeah.
And then Ian is a veteran of the United States military and just very well versed in...
Right, has been involved in a lot of legal things in the military and...
Right, and whatnot. He's also just very good at understanding world events and interpreting that and verbalizing it. And he gets a little snarky on occasion, which I absolutely love.
Must be why you like him so much.
I do. I love that
You and
raw...
Ian and John, yeah.
I love that raw, unfiltered, this is how I feel...
Well, and he can see things from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
Right? He's not so... Part of the issue with my brother is that he's coming from this point of he felt like, and he stated this, I felt like I had to defend the church. And I understand...
You're getting ahead of the story, so be quiet for a minute. Okay.
So anyway, the Mormonism Live one, I won't talk about that.
Okay.
I'll just come back to that thing. There are... consistent methods that people use, and that's not to say that we don't do the same thing, which is why I want people to be able to listen to this kind of thing and say, am I doing that? Do I shift the blame, the proof? Do I shift this or that? Listen to those things so that you can understand better how other people are doing it and how you might be involved in that kind of thing as well.
So
it was very helpful to me.
What I was saying is RFM and Ian... RFM on Mormonism Live, Ian in this in this string of texts was like, dude, she's giving you her evidence. You have to look at it. And the burden to prove it wrong is on you. And he kept saying, I'm not a sheep. I'm not a sheep. And I felt like for the most part in that post string, I communicated well. I provided resources to him until the end when I, got a little snarky because I was like, I'm just done with this. Like, I struggle. So Sarah's trigger and what Sarah has to be aware of is I give you exactly what you ask for. You take I'm going to say cursory glance at it because there's no way he went through all that evidence with the timestamps of when he was responding without saying this isn't good enough. This is a YouTube link. This is a whatever. Well, then I believe later that day on his own feed, he posts something about fluoride in the water and how horrible fluoride is and that it's a conspiracy. The government's trying to make you sick by putting fluoride in the water, blah, 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 blah. And so I asked him for his data because I watched his video and I was like, some of it looks like sound science
freaky,
and some of it doesn't. But where's your double blind studies? Because you could look at it at the same perspective on this fluoride thing is that, you could look at it as leaving the fluoride out of the water could be a conspiracy to make people more sick so that they need more dental care or whatever. And so I tried to engage with him and he shot me down. He's like, I see what you're doing. You're being smart. I'm like, look, I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm coming off snarky. I'm not. I'm actually genuinely curious as to what you're talking about here because some of what's in your video looks legit and some of it doesn't. And since you seem to be the one that says the poster has the burden of proof, do you have a double-blind study that supports any amount of fluoride in our drinking water is terrible? Because I've looked at this issue before when our little kid was young and decided to suck down an entire tube of toothpaste. And as pediatrician said, he's probably going to have some white stains on his teeth. That amount of fluoride is not good for your body. And I had I have real life experience and my son Landon has white stains and marks on his teeth because he got a hold of a tube of toothpaste when he was little and sucked the whole thing down. And then he had lots of antibiotics as well for chronic ear infections for a little while. So between those two substances, and as I talked to the dentist, there was a time where I was concerned about, well, do I need to change our water or do I need to change our toothpaste because my kid has too much fluoride in his system now, blah, blah, blah. And of course, the pediatrician was like, you're okay. It'll be okay. It's fine. Don't freak out, mama. Oh, okay, great. So, I have some experience with this, and I do agree that there's way too many chemicals in our drinking water. Sure. I agree with that point that your brother was trying to make 100%, but I also feel like fluoride in our toothpaste that we spit back into the sink is really good for oral care, and I have several friends in the dental field that I've personally asked, hey, what do you think about fluoride? Absolutely vital for dental care. Don't swallow it. You have it in there, don't swallow it, spit it out, which is why they don't put fluoride in little kids' toothpaste because they suck it down. So anyway, the exchange went south. And it was because I got snarky. I feel like the exchange between you and brother and some of the other people and brother went south in his initial challenging us feed. At the end, I got a little snarky because I was just fed up.
We also communicated by a messenger, which you haven't seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of that. So. Well, and then on the other one, he jumped down my throat, and probably because he was triggered because I did to him what he had done to us, but I wasn't meaning to be that way, but I absolutely was. It makes sense to me that that's how it came off.
And I don't know that he was being snarky initially either. It felt that way.
Yeah.
But
I don't
know that he was.
Well, and please note, I said I took it that way. My perception was this. And then when he said, casting your pearls before swine, I was like, excuse me, You're basically telling me I'm not worth your time.
Right.
And at the end of the day, one of the things...
Which he's done before, actually, on another previous post.
Right. Well, and he does that. But again, I hate to say this, but that's the Westbrook MO. They all do it. That's how they were trained to communicate. And the only siblings that don't do that are the siblings who have made conscious effort to shift the way they communicate for healthier, open dialogue. And so, again, when we talk about this, me, Sarah, I know better. I know when to read somebody's not in a place where they're actually curious to understand. Your brother was not curious to actually know whether or not the castration story was true or not. And he even said that. He said something to the effect of, I already know what the answer is because God has revealed that to me. So no amount of factual data is going to change his mind because he's already made up his mind. He's
not about the church.
Right, not about the church.
Maybe about that story, but not about the church.
Right. Well, and when he's operating from the place of, I'm trying to defend the church, I'm trying to make you guys see,
been there.
Right, you can't do this, Mason and Sarah, you're trying to destroy the church, you're trying, like, he's accused us of that before, that we're trying to bring down the church, blah, blah, blah. And no, it's really not about that. Our intent is informed consent. If you want to be a member of the church, be a member, but let's be informed about our ugly history, because guess what? It's biting you in the butt right now because you're denying that it happened. It's hurting you, and all of these changes that keep happening really are not making a difference in the positive way that I think they are hoping that they make, in my opinion. Because
a lot of the negative patterns continue to exist.
Right,
the negative patterns that led to that colorful history still exist in the church now.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I have to look at me. I knew better. So why didn't I do better? So let's talk about that. Number one, I was triggered. I was also grumpy. Y'all, menopause has not been kind to me the last, I'm going to say, week and a half. I have been happy, sad, moody. I'm gaining weight like crazy, which I absolutely hate. You know, I am a Mormon girl. I grew up in a home where if you didn't have the perfect body, you weren't worth anything. You were made fun of. Like, I remember listening to my parents make fun of heavier set people. Some of my closest friends were heavy. And my mom and my dad would say things like, you know, the only thing that they really need to improve on in their life is their weight. So rude. So me gaining weight is a huge trigger point. So menopause, y'all, the change sucks. And if there's a God, when I get up to him, man, if this is the punishment we got because Eve ate a fucking apple, I'm going to pelt him with apples. I'm going to egg his house. God's mansion's going to get celestial egged.
If you didn't believe what she said about it, I hope you caught the rest of that. This is how I feel. Example.
Yes. Oh, I hate it. Okay. So I wasn't in a good brain space to be having the discussion in the first place. I know better. So why didn't I disengage? Because normally I would be like, meh, whatever. It's another one of Mason's families, like a couple of his family members love conspiracy theories. I feel like and that was the thing, is that I feel like there's a double standard, and it drives me crazy. It's like with the government and with all these other things.
I called him on that too.
So did I, but it doesn't, it doesn't, because God told him the church is true, he doesn't need to do the research, whereas the government is actively harming people. And I'm like, so is the church. It's just not as obvious. And so I really struggle. It's like this double standard of, I'm going to chase down every little story, every shred of anything that confirms, confirmation bias, that the government is operating under conspiracy theories on everything. But I'm not going to look at the church in the same way. I'm not going to hold the church up to the same scrutiny. It was on my nerves. And again, menopause, tired. I'm alone on my trip. I had some things happen on the trip that didn't go the way that I'd wanted to, that had frustrated me. I was not in the right brain space. Why didn't I disengage? Because he irritated me and I wanted to fight because of hormones. Damn it, hormones. The other thing is again, that grief. I want to have my voice heard. Whenever anybody tries to silence my voice, my natural human tendency is to speak louder. And that's normal. But I still need to read the room. So I've got to recognize that I was feeling silenced. I was feeling disrespected. This is a person I care deeply about. I have a very different bond with this brother. And my guess is, and my experience has been that bond has shifted for him. For me, it's almost like that loving aunt. He was 11. We had a lot of fun together. Then he grew up and doesn't have that kind of a relationship with me.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. Yeah.
Right. Well, and your family has never been one to go out of their way to visit family that's not close by and convenient.
No.
That's just not their thing. So I think one of your siblings has made an effort to come visit us on one occasion when they were moving across the country, but due to whatever reason, they're not like that. And that's the complete opposite of how I was raised. I mean, my family, we traveled from Arizona to upstate New York every other summer to visit family. And on the off years, we went to California to visit family. Like, I literally grew up with you travel to see people because I had family from LA to upstate New York. I mean, by the time Mason and I got married, I'd been to almost all of the states, the continental United States, because my family traveled. That's what we did. And almost always we were traveling to visit family or old friends. That's just how we did it.
My family did not travel, not at all.
Right. And a lot of that, again, is probably my mom's military influence, because her family travels to see family. And I think that's par for the course when you're in military. You know, if you want to
maintain those relationships, you got to move. Yeah.
And Mason, your family just has never done that. So, so I grieve that relationship. For me, your youngest brother will always hold a special place in my heart as the little boy that I got to teach how to make English toffee and watch Disney movies with and joke around with and laugh with. And I was heartbroken when he started to struggle during those normal rebellious years. And I didn't have the emotional or mental maturity at that point to understand those patterns. Now, as an adult looking back, I can absolutely, see those addiction patterns coming in, which we're going to do an upcoming episode on addiction. We're in the process of preparing that one. So why didn't I do better? I was triggered. I was in my amygdala brain space. I was hurting, and I was alone. I was not surrounded by the people. When I feel abandoned or silenced, I usually turn to the people who hear me the most. But because I was physically in Orlando in a hotel room on those days by myself, I did not have those same support systems in place. And I didn't take the opportunity like I normally would have. That, again, when I look at achieving my full potential on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I did not have those things in place. My emotional and intellectual security was physically separated from me. Like, you were still there for me, Mason, but Mason was not as emotionally available because he was pulling single daddy duty while working full time. And so when I tried to reach out to him, I didn't get a whole lot of a response because he was busy, and I stopped there. I didn't really engage anybody else. Also, when I had some friends validate what I was trying to say, instead of allowing that validation to help me say, okay, I'm in a good brain space, I'm healthy, I'm loved, I'm important, these people hear me, I don't need everybody to hear me. I understand that youngest brother doesn't know how to communicate without silencing. That's not a skill that he has been taught yet. I didn't allow that process in my brain to work. I utilized the validation of other people as permission to be a bitch.
Engage harder.
Yeah, to engage harder and
Rather
to be bitchy and snarky. And we do that as humans. The popular voice, I mean, if we look at people storming the Capitol, If it had been one or two people trying to storm the Capitol, it would have been a non-issue. But because so many people were supporting each other in that action, violence occurred. Their validation of the concerns turned into something aggressive and violent and ugly and terrible. I mean, terrible for the Trump administration, terrible for the Biden administration, terrible for our United States government. It was awful. Why? Why do these things happen? Well, you get with people who are like-minded, who are fueling each other's amygdala responses. You're going to see a group survival response.
Yeah.
And that was happening for me.
Story of every underdog situation. Look at the American Revolution. Look at the French Revolution. Look at so many different examples over the years.
Right. And it's not always a bad thing either.
No. Sometimes it leads to really good things.
Right. But for me, Sarah Westbrook, the way I responded to youngest brother Westbrook is not who I want to be.
Yeah.
I confirmed in their mind how unreachable, how unapproachable Sarah is in those moments, which is exactly what I'm trying to avoid, because that is not who I am. And so I really want our listeners to be able to hear, even when you know better, sometimes you're going to really fuck it up. I have a responsibility. I haven't done it yet because I'm still struggling with the moody of menopause. Poor Mason almost died yesterday from Sarah's moodiness. Sarah's menopause moodiness, my M&M moments. That's what we're going to start calling it.
M&M, all right.
My M&M moments. Like, are you having an M&M moment? Sarah, just start asking me M&Ms. Start throwing M&Ms at me, something. My menopause moodiness, I've got to let that calm down before I issue an apology. Because if I issue that apology today, before I've had that opportunity to really work through this and get back to a better emotional place, I'm just going to it up again. So do not rush your apologies. I know that it's the human tendency to demand one, but I'm here to say if you want to be genuine in your apologies, you've got to get out of that amygdala brain space. And because I'm not in a good brain space, my apology needs to wait until I can be genuine behind it. Because without that authenticity, it's going to come off flat.
Yeah, and a good, authentic apology can do so much good and create so much positivity in a relationship, but a poor apology can often do even more damage. So yeah, take the time to make sure that you're in the right place to be able to work through the apology in the way that you really want to do it, because otherwise you're going to come off snarky. You're going to be feeling some resentment. I've done that where I've sat down to write or to say an apology and I'm not quite in the right place, and so there's some underlying resentment
I'm sorry
going on.
But
right. We screw it up in a lot of different ways, but I can feel that resentment inside of me, and at the end I'm like, well, shoot, that just made things worse, right. And that's not what we want to do.
Well, and again, I have to respect where youngest brother Westbrook is at. If younger brother Westbrook is not willing to look at the church in the same way that he looks at governmental conspiracy theories, that's his right.
Absolutely.
That is 100%. He gets to do that. And if I want to have a relationship with him, I have to honor that is where he is. And I have to if I want to be true to me, I have to back down when he engages and I identify he doesn't actually want to know. For me, that sign was when we provided data and he tossed it. Okay, if you're, you know what, little brother, if you're not in a place where you want to truly consider that your church may not be all it pronounces itself to be, if you're not willing or able to look at the dark side, it's not my job to make you do that. Yeah. I need to respect where he is at, and I didn't in that moment. I was trying to be right rather than understood. And so for me, but that's again normal human.
We've all been there.
Yeah, we all do it.
Been there where we're fighting to be right rather than fighting. I used to say all the time growing up, it doesn't really matter who's right, but it matters what's right. That's the idea, and that's maybe an oversimplification of situations. But yeah, when you find yourself fighting to be right, you're probably not in the best place.
I would challenge that, Mason, in what's right. That's where we get stuck on what's factually accurate.
And that's not what I mean by that.
That's where things go to hell.
Right.
We've got to be able to recognize, is the person I'm engaging with truly interested in learning what I have to present? And if the answer is no, then to do no harm, I need to react and respond in a respectful manner to their not readiness.
Yeah.
And that is really hard to do, because when we're talking about relationships, especially marriages, it can absolutely lead to divorce, because you're trying to force your spouse to believe in or engage with something that they're not able to. And that happens on both sides. That happens on, I can't be married to somebody who doesn't believe the church is true, and I'm having a hard time staying in a relationship with somebody who believes that the church is true. Like it happens. Yeah. And so oftentimes, if you cannot have a relationship where there's a strong difference of faith-based beliefs, religious practices, so on and so forth, if you cannot coexist in that brain space, unfortunately, sometimes divorce is better than staying married, because you will both be happier and healthier people when you don't have that barrier in the relationship.
Yeah, well, and I completely agree. Let me clarify what that has meant to me, that statement of it doesn't matter who's right, but what is right.
Are you trying to be right?
No, not at all. Because when I said...
that was a joke, damn it.
When I said that statement is an oversimplification, I meant that because it can be taken in a lot of ways that's probably not healthy. For me, that has always meant that it doesn't matter which of us is right in a situation. Sometimes what we have to do is step back and go, okay, what's best for us right now? Because it might be we need to just stop talking about this for a little bit. Hold on. And focus instead of on what or who is right, focus instead on what is best for us at this moment. How do we... If the relationship is what matters the most, how do I preserve that? And sometimes that's me, well, we need to step back. We need to stop talking or whatever. We need to change our perspectives.
I disagree. It's not about what's best for us. It's about what causes the least harm. And sometimes that's not what's best. Sometimes our best isn't good enough. And so I think that when we put things in that black and white space of best and worst, healthiest, unhealthiest, we limit our ability to navigate difficult situations.
For me, it's not black and white. I'm not trying. Maybe I'm not explaining it very well, because it's not a black and white thing for me. Okay. It's about examining the situation and understanding if the path we're walking right now is what's going to work for us, or if it's not going to work for us, and recognizing then what step needs to be made now. Do we need to switch directions? Do we need to stop for a little bit? Do we need to readdress this topic later? Whatever the situation might be, it's about recognizing how we're doing this now, not working.
Right.
So what do we do in order to find the best outcome for us in this particular situation?
Right. I think where I messed up the most with your youngest brother is that I did not take time to understand his intent in asking for data before responding. As I said before, when I already know, when I talked to, when we did that podcast before, sister one, brother two,
right.
blah, 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 blah.
We've been in this situation before.
Right. We've been in this situation before. I choose not to engage with them anymore, because anytime I engage, it's a trap. We need to confirm that Sarah is wrong in order for our worldview to not crumble with the church, because they view me as a dangerous person who's trying to tear down their religious structure, which is not what I'm trying to do. But that doesn't matter. That is their
what they see.
truth.
It's what they want to see.
Right. It's but that's their perspective. It's their truth. It's subjective. It's not factual truth. That is their subjective truth based on their worldview and their experiences, are that anybody who challenges the church is a dangerous person. They are an apostate, and you try and save them, but if they're still going on their apostate ways, you back off and you just avoid and you stay away and you shut it down and you break up families. And I'm again respecting that, because it doesn't matter what I say to them. If it's anything of my authentic self, it's viewed as dangerous, toxic. Their amygdala is going to get engaged, and they're not in a place where they've demonstrated a willingness to do things differently.
Right.
I would say youngest brother is demonstrating, trying to talk about it differently. And so there's a little bit more dialogue still going on there, which also leaves room for both of us messing it up.
Yeah.
But I did not take the time to understand his intent. If I had asked a question like, are you asking because you actually want to know whether or not this happened, or are you asking because you feel like you need to defend the church?
It's a very good question.
Then I would have done things differently, because if he had been able to say, I feel like you're attacking the church and I want to demonstrate that these stories aren't based in fact and therefore should be eliminated from determining whether or not the Mormon church is true, then I could say, great, do the research. You defend.
Right,
if that's
you
what
do
you
you,
feel
yeah.
you need to, you do you. God bless you. And if you really want to have the data for proving this right or wrong, go for it. Go for it. I will leave you alone on that front. And whatnot. And I didn't read the room. Which is abnormal for me most of the time. Most of the time I do a very good job of reading the room.
Yeah, you really do.
Most of the time I do a really good job of understanding somebody's readiness, willingness, openness, intent for things.
For big and little situations.
Big and little things.
You do a very good job of that most of the time.
And I didn't this time, and that's okay. I have some apologies I need to do. I've got some repair attempts I need to do. Number one, I have to work through it on my own. Yeah. I've got to work through understanding where I was, understanding what got me, finish my emotional cycle, use that RAID acronym, take some time, and then when I've calmed myself down and I'm in a good mental space, I need to offer an effective and genuine apology. It is not my responsibility to teach youngest brother Westbrook how to communicate more effectively. If he asks me how to do that, I'm happy to coach and guide or refer him to somebody who can teach him that. It is my responsibility to use the skills that I have to communicate more effectively. So moving forward, that is my plan. Youngest brother Westbrook is going to be getting an apology from me, hopefully here in the next couple of days. I got to go see the doctor about these mood swings because, and I want our listener to know that you're still allowed to be human, that it's okay to f it up because you're gonna, and that as you can recognize, I didn't handle that in the way that is true to who I am trying to be, you have a lot more power to course correct, apologize, and heal the relationships that you may have damaged in your mistakes.
Because now the apology is not for that person. The apology is for me. I'm apologizing because I want to fall back in line with who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's for both of us because I also want to make sure that if I've hurt, emotionally wounded your brother in any way, that is not my intent, not ever. So I do want to apologize for him. Whether or not he accepts that apology as genuine or not, I don't really have a whole lot of control over that.
That's not your responsibility, yeah.
So that's where the apology is for me, in the sense of I am apologizing and I will be saying sorry for the things I am sorry for. And it will be genuine. It will be heartfelt. And if he hears that, great. And if he doesn't, I've done my part. I cannot control him. And
Yeah.
what got me in trouble in the first place in this was trying to change his opinion and trying to call him out on his shitty communication skills. And it was not the time, not the place, and it was not my responsibility either. So owning that is going to be part of this healing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to point out, you talked about the RAID cycle. If you go to daisygirlcommunications.com, for those of you that have not done that, there is a flyer there that you can print up that talks about the RAID cycle. I believe it was in episode 3 for us, School Thy Feelings, that we talked about the RAID cycle. I believe that's where it was,
think it was a
although
little
I'm
bit
not
later.
positive. But we do go through that and discuss that and how you complete the emotional cycle. Very helpful information.
And for the data on that, read Emily Nagoski's book,
Yeah, that's
Burnout.
in Burnout. Yep.
The RAID acronym is mine that I created for my own clinic, but the data that it is coming from is the data from Emily Nagoski's studies that she illustrates in her self-help book, Burnout.
Very, very good book.
Yep.
Yeah.
All righty. So Mason, did you have anything else for our listeners today?
Ooh, I don't think so. Yes, one thing, just that it also can make a difference. You know, the conversation that I had with my brother, a little bit different than the conversation you had with my brother. And so there's lots of things that can be learned from both sides of that, and just learn to read the room. We talked about that in episode 2, and just recognizing when it is likely to be positive if you engage in a conversation, when it's likely to be negative when you engage in the conversation, so that you can protect yourself, your own emotional health and well-being, and that relationship. There's lots of things that if we just take a little bit of time before engaging and just kind of feel out where we are, maybe try and figure out where they are, although much of the time we'll be wrong, but if we try and figure out where they are, then when we engage in those conversations, or when we choose not to engage in those conversations, we're more likely to accomplish what it is that we're trying to accomplish in a healthy way.
Absolutely. So the last thing I want to do is give a shout out here to our listeners. So we are in the process of creating Daisy Girl Communications, Unpacking Mormonism, Raising Crazy, Conversations with a Schizophrenic merchandise. I am in the process of getting some of those contracts going. We would love to see you in our Facebook group. And so for the first 10 people who start a conversation in our Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma Facebook page or Facebook group, either place, the first 10 people to start a conversation there will get a piece of free merchandise to be announced and shipped to you by the middle of March. It will probably come earlier than that, but I'm going to say middle of March just because of the timeline for when this will get released and whatnot. But we would really like to hear from you. We really want to see some more activity on those groups. We want to have a little bit more feedback. Things have been a little bit silent recently on that front, so we'd really like to see some good dialoguing going on there, and ask us any questions.
Give us ideas. Help us know what you'd like to hear about, so that we can
absolutely, and let us know what kind of merchandise you would like to see available at daisygirlcommunications.com. Love you, listener. We cannot wait to hear from you and learn, grow, and become better together.
Today's episode was hosted by Sarah and Mason Westbrook, produced by Daisy Girl Communications and Alex Vidalis. We would love to see you on our Unpacking Mormonism and Other Religious Trauma Facebook page. Today's music provided by Run to Life and John Worthy Music.
I'm going to warn y'all right now, menopause is kicking my ass, and my language is going to be in the tanker today, and I don't give a fuck. That is where I'm at. Our producer is going to be editing lots and lots of F-bombs out today. So thank you, Alex. We
Pray
love
for me,
you.
y'all. Pray for me.
Pray for Mason. He's going to have steam coming out of his ears. It's going to be great. which I did say fuck that. I didn't say fuck you, but I did say fuck that. Alex, good luck with all those bleepity bleep bleeps there.
Making Alex earn his money this time.
Yeah, go Alex.